Good evening. Thanks very much for joining us on India Business Hour. I'm Shireen Bhan. The big stories that we're tracking for you this evening. Ukraine's President Zelenskyy says 10 people have been killed in Russian attacks just hours before his scheduled summit with President Trump. Zelenskyy says Russia should not be rewarded for waging a war. President Trump rules out Ukraine's claim for Crimea or potentially joining the NATO if it wants to end the war. President Putin dials Prime Minister Modi to share his assessment of the Alaska summit with President Trump. PM Modi underlines India's stance, calling for a peaceful resolution. This is the second phone call between both leaders in the last 2 weeks. China's top diplomat Wang Yi meets India's External Affairs Minister Jaishankar in New Delhi as both nations attempt to reset the bilateral relationship. Prime Minister Modi is set to visit China for the first time in 7 years at the end of the month. The Indian government braces for 50% US tariff starting the 27th of August. Sources say trade talks with the US scheduled for the 25th of August have been postponed. Exporters rush to beat the deadline, leading to increased freight costs and longer wait for customs clearances. Shares of automobile companies and consumer durable goods rally in trade after Prime Minister Modi proposes a major shakeup to the GST regime. Brokerages say any potential tax cut will bolster demand this festive season. Kotak predicts a demand boost of 2.4 lakh crore rupees. Punjab's finance minister says the centre must take states' financial health into consideration while implementing next-gen GST reforms. Says discontinuing the 14% compensation cess has hit many states hard. That's a CNBC-TV18 exclusive. Hopes of GST reforms lift Dalal-Street. The Sensex reclaims 81,000. The Nifty gains nearly 250 points. Mid and small caps also higher today as we saw a broad-based rally. The union government is likely to propose lower GST on small cars and two-wheelers. Sources say cars below 1200cc and two-wheelers below 350cc could move from the current 28% tax slab to 18%. The Election Commission has completely failed to discharge its constitutional duties and ensure a level playing field, allege opposition parties in a joint statement. This comes a day after the CEC held a press conference dismissing allegations of voter fraud. Opposition likely to move an impeachment motion against Chief Election Commissioner Gyanesh Kumar. Heavy rains lash Mumbai for the third straight day. Waterlogging across several low-lying areas disrupt traffic. Authorities ask residents to avoid unnecessary travel. Well, let's head straight to the market action. Hopes of a GST rejig lifting Dalal-Street today with all-round gains being seen. So what we saw today was frontline indices recording gains of about 1% each. The Sensex reclaiming 81,000 up 677 points, 245 higher on the Nifty. The Nifty bank up by about 400 points in a 600-point move up there as far as the mid-cap index is concerned. So a pretty broad-based rally that we saw on account of the GST rejig expectations. We'll bring you a lot more on the GST reforms and what it could mean for different sectors. That's coming up for you in just a bit on India Business Hour. But the big global story that's moving markets worldwide. President Trump set to meet Ukraine's President Zelenskyy and other European leaders in Washington in a bid to reach a peace agreement with Russia. The leaders of Britain, Germany, France and others will be present to offer their support to President Zelenskyy, a show of strength there. Well, you might want to remember what happened in the last meeting in the White House between Zelenskyy and President Trump. President Zelenskyy has alleged that 10 people have been killed in Russian attacks hitting out at what he called the Russian war machine. Zelenskyy said that Moscow should not be rewarded for its participation in the war. The high-profile meeting comes nearly 6 months after President Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance accused Zelenskyy of ingratitude and disrespect at the White House in February, making the televised gathering between the leaders a diplomatic disaster. Discussions between Ukraine and the US have become crucial as Russian President Putin met with the US President in Alaska over the weekend. However, there was no breakthrough in ending the war. Interestingly, President Trump dropped his previous demand of a ceasefire and said that the best way to end the war is to directly go to a peace agreement. Now, this bolsters Russia's position that allows fighting to continue until a deal is reached. As per reports, Putin has demanded that Kyiv cede the region of Donetsk and Luhansk to Russia, and in return for the Kremlin halting its military advance and freezing the front line. Iman Avaz is here with more on what we can expect from the meeting between President Trump and Zelenskyy. Iman.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy is expected here at the White House later today to help chart a path forward in the wake of those failed talks between President Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin in Alaska on Friday. Also present, as you say, are going to be the leaders of 5 European countries who are part of a coalition of the willing backing Ukraine against the Russian invasion. Now, sources told NBC News over the weekend that President Trump engaged with President Zelenskyy and European leaders by phone early Saturday morning about the U.S. being party to a potential NATO-like security guarantee for Ukraine as part of a deal struck with Russia. Such security guarantees have been a key demand of the Ukrainians as part of any deal to end the fighting. Zelenskyy took to social media to set some expectations for today, writing, "I am grateful to @POTUS for the invitation. We all share a strong desire to end this war quickly and reliably, and peace must be lasting, not like it was years ago when Ukraine was forced to give up Crimea and part of our east, part of Donbass, and Putin simply used it as a springboard for a new attack, or when Ukraine was given so-called security guarantees in 1994, but they didn't work." Now take a look here at the list of European attendees at the White House today. It is a set of power hitters here. The President of Finland will be here. The Chancellor of Germany will be here. The President of the European Commission, the NATO Secretary General, the Prime Minister of the UK, the Prime Minister of Italy, the President of France, all in the building here at the White House today. And the question for all those leaders is whether they can craft NATO-like security guarantees for Ukraine that are enough like NATO to reassure the Ukrainians that they're real, and yet not so much like NATO that they're a non-starter for the Russian side, which feels very much threatened by the presence of NATO on their frontier.
Iman Havez there reporting from outside the White House ahead of that big meeting. Now, Russia's president has dialed Prime Minister Modi to share his assessment of the Alaska summit with President Trump. Prime Minister Modi underlining India's stance, calling for a peaceful resolution, reiterating India's support for the efforts in this regard. The two leaders also discussed issues on bilateral cooperation. This is the second phone call between President Putin and Prime Minister Modi in the last 2 weeks. External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar will travel to Moscow on the 20th of August. He will engage in high-level talks with the Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. This visit is meant to prepare the ground for the proposed visit by President Putin to India later this year. Putin has not visited India since the war in Ukraine began more than 3 years ago. China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi in India now for 2 days. He will hold crucial bilateral meetings on border issues with the External Affairs Minister. Speaking to reporters, Jaishankar said that India and China are seeking to move past recent difficulties. Prime Minister Modi is set to visit China for the first time in 7 years at the end of the month.
Having seen a difficult period in our relationship, Excellency, our two nations now seek to move ahead. This requires a candid and constructive approach from both sides. In that endeavor, we must be guided by the three mutuals: mutual respect, mutual sensitivity, and mutual interest. Differences must not become disputes, nor competition, conflict.
We should develop confidence to dispel interference, expand cooperation, and to further consolidate the momentum of improvement and development of China-India relations, so that while pursuing our respective rejuvenation, we can contribute to each other's success and provide the most needed certainty and stability to Asia and the world.
Well, a crucial meeting there of the two foreign ministers, India and China, ahead of that big meeting, the SCO summit, where the Prime Minister will travel to China at the end of the month. Now, the government is bracing for the 50% US tariffs that will kick in from the 27th of August. Sources tell CNBC-TV18 that trade talks with the US that were scheduled for the 25th of August have now been postponed. Parikshit is standing by with the latest. Parikshit, what does this mean now for the trade negotiations that were currently underway?
Well, there was some amount of hope from the 6th round of trade talks between India and US, which were slotted for the 25th of August, 2 days before the 27th August deadline for the 25% additional tariff to kick in. Those 6th round of negotiations are not taking place. The US team has communicated to India that they are not coming, and at this juncture, they don't want to pursue the trade negotiations. Now, the reason why this is important is because all indications are that come 27th of August, India's tariff from the US will go up to 50%. Now, that will be a major setback for India's labour-intensive sectors such as footwear, leather exports and textile exports as well. What is the real way out? There will be negotiations, back-channel negotiations are taking place, but for the moment, there is no deal or understanding between India and the United States. We hear from sources that possibly the US and White House would like a conversation between Donald Trump and Prime Minister Narendra Modi, but we also believe that both sides are not close to any such conversation just as yet. US, Russia and Ukraine are yet to agree on any sort of deal or understanding to end the Russia-Ukraine war. And until that happens, it is unlikely that Donald Trump will give up the leverage in the form of higher tariffs and penalty tariffs on India for purchase of Russian oil. Post the Alaska summit, Donald Trump had said that he's not thinking about secondary sanctions for at least the next 2 to 3 weeks. The Indian side has interpreted this as saying that no secondary sanctions on India for at least the next 3 to 4 weeks, or this is something that the US is not considering. Now, secondary sanctions would be sanctions against Indian entities, banks, companies for doing business with Russia. That has not happened. What we're looking at right now and staring at on the 27th of August is a 25% reciprocal tariff plus another 25% in the form of an additional penalty on Indian goods going into the United States. So let's see what happens in the weeks to come. There is still hope that negotiations, back-channel talks will yield some results.
Parikshit, many thanks. Indian exporters are also rushing to meet that tariff deadline. Sources have told us that front-loading has led to a shortage of space on mother vessels. With the customs clearance period also increasing, exporters will now have to shell out 20% more for space on vessels, depending on how voluminous their products are. So race to meet that deadline before the 50% tariffs kick in. Stocks of steel producers, including JSW, Tata Steel and SAIL, surging in trade. This after the Director General of Trade Remedies recommended a final safeguard duty on the import of flat steel products for 3 years. The Commerce Ministry's arm has proposed that the duty be gradually moved down from 12% to 11% over the period. The DGTR said the extension was needed because of a sudden surge in shipments from China, which threatened domestic industry. Now, Prime Minister Modi has proposed a major shake-up to the current GST regime. The proposal is to end the current 4-slab structure and introduce a 2-slab structure with 5 and 18% of the tax rates, but actually it's 3 because there is a 40% tax rate as well. Now, during his address on Independence Day, Prime Minister Modi made these proposals, urging state governments to cooperate and ensure that the reforms are undertaken ahead of Diwali. Now, the group of ministers on GST rate rationalisation is scheduled to meet on the 21st of August. Here's the Prime Minister on the proposed GST reforms.
इस दिवाली में आपकी डबल दिवाली का काम मैं करने वाला हूं। इस दिवाली में आपको एक बहुत बड़ा तोहफा देशवासियों को मिलने वाला है। पिछले 8 साल से हमने जीएसटी का बहुत बड़ा रिफॉर्म किया। पूरे देश में टैक्स के बर्डन को कम किया, टैक्स की व्यवस्थाओं को सरल किया और 8 साल के बाद समय की मांग है कि हम एक बार उसको रिव्यू करें। हमने एक हाई पावर कमेटी को बिठा करके रिव्यू शुरू किया, राज्यों से भी विचार विमर्श किया और मेरे प्यारे देशवासियों, हम नेक्स्ट जनरेशन जीएसटी रिफॉर्म्स लेकर के आ रहे हैं। ये दिवाली के अंदर आपके लिए तोहफा बन जाएंगे।
Well, the centre has circulated a blueprint for next generation GST reforms, a move that could change how India consumes and pays taxes. The key proposal, a 2 simplified rate structure, 5% and 18%, and a brand new 40% slab for sin goods. So let's break it down for you. According to government sources, the centre has proposed to collapse the current 4-slab structure into 2 rates, 5% that is the standard rate for essentials and daily use goods, 18% the merit rate for most of the other goods and services. The 28% slab will also be done away with, and a new 40% slab will apply only on sin and luxury goods. If the proposal goes through, household goods and insurance premia could get cheaper. Items like categories such as daily essentials, stationery, exercise books, namkeens, etc. will fall in the 5% category, down from 12%. Packaged food, butter, ghee 2, apparel footwear, bicycles, eyewear, and even tooth powder also brought down from 12% to 5%. Government sources also say medicines and medical equipments, medical devices could see a further tax cut from 12% to either 5% or even nil. The big ticket relief, health and life insurance premia currently taxed at 18%. These could come down to 5% or nil, easing the burden on middle class and households. Another round of correction and relief will come for both consumers and industry by correcting the inverted duty structure of textiles and fertilizers, giving relief to farmers and consumers. Government sources have said this. Apart from this, the centre is also targeting consumer durables and automobiles such as TVs, refrigerators, ACs, cement. They are likely to come down from 28% to 18% on the automobile side, as I said. Two-wheelers below 350cc could come down from 28% to 18%. Small cars under 1200cc engines, which are currently in the bracket of 28% GST plus cess, ranging between 29% to 31%, to be at flat 18% if the proposal goes through. Hybrid passenger vehicles, again, likely to be brought down from 28% plus cess, and in certain categories, not even cess, to 18%. Sources say that the design is aimed at simplification without hurting revenues. The 18% slab currently accounts for 65 to 67% of total GST revenue and is likely to remain the same because it is mostly services which contributes to this. The 5% slab garners 7%, while 12% slab brings in 5% of revenue, so most of which will move to 5% or nil. The 28% slab currently contributes to 11% of revenue, which will largely disappear as 90% of these items in this slab will be brought down to 18%. Some goods will face higher taxes. Government sources say that a new 40% slab will apply to 5 to 7 items, including pan masala, gutka, tobacco products, luxury cars and SUVs, and even online gaming, which may scale up from current 28% to 40%. So the big idea is to push consumption by making aspirational and essential goods cheaper while taxing sin goods at a higher rate. Now the group of ministers will meet on August 20th on insurance premia and compensation cess, and 21st August on rate rationalization to discuss these proposals, after which the GST Council will take a final call. This could well be the Diwali bonanza that PM hinted about and PM spoke about when he spoke of the next generation GST reforms.
Timsy, many thanks. And staying with GST, brokerages say any potential tax cut will bolster demand this festive season and boost earnings outlook for the next fiscal. Kotak also predicts a demand boost of 2.4 lakh crore rupees. Hormuz is standing by with the estimates coming in from across brokerages. Hormuz.
There's some interesting developments coming in from the brokerages when it comes to potential beneficiaries of this. Starting off with Jefferies, and they are mentioning the usual suspects that moved higher today, that there is a good chance that the GST on cement, two-wheelers and the AC manufacturers could go down to 18% from the current levy of 28%. They also highlight insurance, hybrid cars, garment footwear, and that could also see some reduction. On the passenger cars front, though, they are saying that a proposal to bring GST rates down on passenger cars could not be ruled out either. Now, Citi believes that this rate rationalization or the potential rate rationalization could boost festive season demand, and coupled with all the tax cuts announced earlier and the rate cuts announced earlier and that could also in turn boost the earnings outlook for FY27, something that they are keenly watching out for. Kotak, as you highlighted, a 2.5 lakh crore potential boost, majorly for the auto and the consumer durable sector, not particularly for cement because the sector does not have enough price elasticity. So only for autos and for consumer durables here. Goldman Sachs is expecting the consumer products within this 12% bracket to see a significant boost, with stocks like Trent, Britannia being some of the key beneficiaries. The CLSA has highlighted that these AC makers, which are seeing a period of sluggish demand, they could see a demand boost if the GST rates on the air conditioners are brought down. And Bernstein believes that insurance as a segment could see a rationalization of the GST rate and from the current 18%, and for the Nifty as a result, despite these tariff-related headwinds and the potential hopes of an earnings upgrade, they could see high single-digit returns for the rest of the year. So plenty of sectors highlighted by brokerages, but the day clearly belonged to auto, consumer durables and a lot of these insurance names.
Thomas, many thanks. And we're not done with GST just yet. Punjab's Finance Minister Harpal Singh Cheema says that the centre must take states' financial health into consideration while implementing the next-gen GST reforms. In a conversation with CNBC-TV18, Cheema said that the discontinuation of the 14% compensation cess has hit many states hard. Remember, there will be no further compensation to states.
2 लाख करोड़ का तो उसमें एम्बेजलमेंट हो जाता है हर एक साल आईटीसी रिटर्न में। तो जितने भी जीवन बने हुए हैं, हम उन जिसमें भी हम मेंबर हैं उसमें हम यही आवाज उठाते हैं कि इसमें स्ट्रक्चरल चेंज होनी चाहिए और स्लैब जो है वो कम होनी चाहिए ताकि लोग ज्यादा से ज्यादा टैक्स की कंप्लायंस कर सकें। कंपनसेशन सेस जो है वो आने वाले समय में भी रहना चाहिए ताकि जिन राज्यों का रेवेन्यू लॉस हो रहा है उन राज्यों की भरपाई जो है, उन राज्यों का लॉस जो है कंपनसेशन सेस से पूरा किया जाए।
Meanwhile, auto companies welcomed the Prime Minister's announcement on the GST rate rationalisation. Maruti Suzuki's chairman R.C. Bhargav told CNBC-TV18 that people have wanted a rationalisation of rates for a long time, adding that the auto sector is now awaiting the GST Council decision. M&M's Rajesh Jujurikar has also said that this creates a great opportunity to make in India.
You know, the thing about gifts is you should accept it with grace.
Absolutely.
And let it be a nice, pleasant surprise.
Yeah.
But I would just add to say that, you know, automotive is a very key sector in India. It's a GDP multiplier. It's an employment multiplier. And with the kind of technologies we are developing in India, there's a huge opportunity for Make in India for the world. And a key part of Make in India for the world is about how much you can sell in your own home country.
Absolutely.
You know, the more you sell in your own home country, the stronger you become. You start getting economies of scale, which allows you to be more competitive. The supply ecosystem builds up. And like I said, it's a huge employment generation as well.
Well, GST reactions galore. They're up next on India Business Hour. Heavy rains lash Mumbai for the third straight day. Waterlogging across several low-lying areas disrupt traffic. That and more when we return. Catch all of CNBC-TV18's news and updates on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, X and Jio Hotstar. Well, shares of Vodafone Idea in focus today as the company said that investors were encouraged by the telecom company's June quarter performance. Vodafone Idea's net loss in the first quarter narrowed compared to the previous quarter. The average revenue per user rose 15% to 177 rupees ahead of estimates. This even as revenues remain flat at a little above 11,000 crore rupees. Several Airtel users across Delhi NCR are reporting widespread disruptions in mobile network. Complaints range from call drops to complete loss of signal and slow internet connectivity. Users in Mumbai and Bengaluru also flagged similar issues soon after. Down Detector, which monitors tech glitches, saw over 3,600 reports of Airtel outages at around 4:32 p.m. There was a gradual decline to less than 1,300 reports by 5:40 p.m. The company has said that they have been able to rectify the problem to a large extent, apologizing for the inconvenience caused. Seafood supply chain startup Captain Fresh has filed its IPO papers with market regulator SEBI. Sources say the company aims to raise 1,700 crore rupees via a fresh issue. This public issue will also include an offer for sale portion worth $400 million. The IPO proceeds will be used towards repaying debt. In a joint statement, the opposition parties have alleged that the Election Commission completely failed to discharge its constitutional duties and ensure a level playing field. This comes a day after the CEC held a press conference dismissing allegations of voter fraud. Opposition parties may in fact move an impeachment motion against the Chief Election Commissioner, Gyanesh Kumar. The government has introduced the Jan Vishwas Bill 2025 in the Lok Sabha. The bill was referred to a select committee which will submit its report on the first day of the next parliament session. The bill proposes to decriminalise 288 provisions to promote the ease of doing business. A total of 355 provisions will be amended across central acts. The bill is also proposing 76 new amendments to improve the ease of living. Mumbai continued to reel under heavy rainfall for the third straight day. The IMD issued a red alert for the city and nearby districts. The downpour led to waterlogging in low-lying areas and delayed suburban trains. The IMD has predicted heavy rains and winds tomorrow as well. Schools and colleges in Mumbai and metropolitan region and the suburbs will remain closed on Tuesday. Network 18's team of reporters were out on the streets getting us the latest.
It's a day of extremely heavy rainfall here in Mumbai. I'm currently in Dadar East And if you can see behind me, there is severe water logging that has happened, and there is a massive traffic jam here for the past several hours. The police is trying really hard to clear traffic out, but as you can see, water is the water level here is quite high, and we're being told, and we were looking at walking around the area here also, and several lanes and by lanes also there is water at least up to the knees, and this is the situation in fact across the city today. IMD has declared a red alert for today.
अंधेरी सबवे के पास है और बारिश की वजह से आप देख सकते हैं कि जो सबवे है वो पूरी तरह से बंद कर दिया गया है, क्योंकि ये एक इम्पोर्टेंट सबवे है जो मुंबई को, जो सबब को अंधेरी ईस्ट से अंधेरी वेस्ट की तरफ जोड़ता है। और इसी वजह से जब यहाँ पे बारिश तेज होती है और जब पानी भर जाता है तो पूरे सबवे को बंद कर दिया जाता है। अगर मैं आपको दूसरी तरफ दिखाऊं तो पुलिस ने बैरिकेड्स लगा के यहाँ पे रखे हुए हैं कि कोई भी जो 4-व्हीलर 2-व्हीलर या ऑटो रिक्शा है वो यहाँ तक ना पहुँच पाए।
Day-long rain in Mumbai has disrupted life in the city, with several areas such as this, like that in Chembur, wherein the water has also entered several residential areas, including the houses of some of these people who stay in these low-lying areas. This is the postal colony of Chembur. It is among the low-lying areas. In fact, you see that there are huge pumps of BMC that have been deployed here to drain the water out, but despite that, there is no respite for these people. Clearly, the rains which started early this morning have continued to cause havoc in the city at various locations.
Well, that was the situation across Mumbai today. And as we pointed out, the Met Department has issued an alert for tomorrow schools and colleges to remain shut. But with that, it is time for us to wrap up this edition of India Business Hour. Thanks very much for watching. But don't go anywhere, because that big meeting, President Trump and Zelenskyy meeting in the White House, CNBC-TV18 will bring you all the latest right here. Catch the global developments as they take shape. Get the CNBC edge. We'll be right back with you with that story and more.